Welcome to the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
What's up, guys? Josh Chin here. I'm the host of the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts and entrepreneurs in the e-commerce industry, and we go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes in growing a brand. Now, this episode is brought to you by chronos.agency. If you run a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand that is ready to scale and to double your customer lifetime value through retention marketing, Chronos is your company. We've helped hundreds of brands scale profits with email, SMS, and mobile push, while getting an average of 3,500% ROI from our efforts. We've worked with brands like Truly Beauty, The Udi, Dr. Living Good, and many more. The next step is to email us at sales@chronos.agency, or you can go to chronos.agency to learn more. Today's guest is, and Evan, I'm sorry I didn't ask you this before you hit and record, but how do you pronounce your last name? I hate
Padgett.
getting people's names wrong. Padgett? Gotcha. Evan Padgett. And Evan is the Chief Operating Officer and partner at Stealth Venture Labs, one of the elite paid acquisition and e-commerce marketing firms worldwide. He oversees all team and organizational infrastructure out there at Stealth Venture Labs, working to provide the best environment for talented and awesome team members to do their best work. And Evan is an e-commerce and subscription commerce executive, and I would say veteran, with over 20 years of experience.
20 years. Yep.
20 years of experience. As COO of Stealth Venture Labs, he has worked with brands like Crocs, HelloFresh, Factor 75, Mudwater, and many, many more. Before Stealth, you were at Thrive Market, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And Evan, your internet career started 20 years ago at a little firm called MySpace, well, the parent company of MySpace.
Yep.
I find it fascinating. I want to pick your mind around how e-commerce and the internet has evolved as a consumer tool over the years. Your take on subscription models. I love the model. I'm interested in picking your mind around how brands could introduce a subscription element to their business model and the overall dynamics of the ecosystem and how it has shifted over time. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Evan, as you know, the e-commerce landscape, and we're going to go broad here to begin with, the e-commerce landscape starts and kind of begins with what just the triopoly and the three giants are doing in the space. That's Facebook, Google, and I suppose Apple in this case, and Amazon, and right now Apple.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that statement that I believe that 80% of what's happening in e-commerce and how we're adapting and shifting is largely due to these three firms: Facebook, Google, Amazon, and maybe Apple?
I mean, you could easily make the case from an advertising point of view between Facebook and Google and what they can get into. You have so much of the internet, especially in the United States and major markets. You have Apple's influence with privacy, with iOS changes that happened last year, a certainly hot topic among marketers. And then, of course, you have the 900-pound gorilla of sorts which is Amazon, which is a mixed bag, in my opinion, for what you want to do with your brand. And some brands where you have to put a value to owning your data and your customer relationship. But there's certainly major pros and cons with each, and something I would say I consult with a lot of entrepreneurs about when they ask this question of, well, should I get on Amazon? Which is a super loaded question that I love walking people through, because the answer is maybe, but know what you got to give up in order to do that.
Do you think it's a trade-off with the whole
Absolutely.
Amazon ecosystem? What exactly is a trade-off? In what situations would you say no? Probably not.
So Amazon is this, right? Amazon is arguably the biggest marketplace in the world for being able to buy, consumer packaged goods. It's hard to find anybody that's never purchased from Amazon. And they have so many eyeballs every single day, right? And it's only a chunk of your revenue is all it really costs to be on Amazon. So the exposure you can get from your brand, your ability to tell a brand story and develop one on Amazon is great. And there are, I've personally known several people that have literally just developed like high margin brands, take beauty, for example, skincare products and the health and wellness products, and launched them on Amazon, made millions of dollars and went away, just sold the brand or wound it down, right? So yeah, the trade-off is you have Amazon who's going to give you exposure and volume at a cost of a % of your revenue. And you're never going to really know your customers. But okay, so that's one, but you're generating money, which is certainly important. Going vertical, which in this case, I look at you're controlling your advertising stream. You're controlling the user experience on your website, is another way to go that may require a little bit more capital in the short term, but obviously total ownership of your brand in the long term. The mistake I see people making is not knowing that beforehand, because I get a lot of people that are like, I'm on Amazon and I'm doing really well, but I want to do direct to consumer advertising and get my product more and more exposure. That's kind of one of those have your cake and eat it too things, which is expensive and sometimes incredibly difficult to do. And I can elaborate more on that if you'd like.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Now let me steer away from this conversation a little bit and go a little bit deeper into. You talked about owning your brand 100% and having control over your relationships with your customers. Effectively, that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
Sure.
When it comes to the process of scaling brands, why is that important? And how do you make sure that you still retain those relationships?
Yeah, it takes work and intention, right? So what I mean by that is you're spending your advertising dollars, you're spending your brand marketing dollars, you're building up your brand story. And when you send people to yourdomain.com, you're owning their interaction with you, right? They're coming into your store, meaning you have data to track them. You have data in the form of CRM when they order, and you can now do what you do and message them, email, SMS, etc. And you own the customer relationship, and you could build that customer relationship. It is deep. It is more than surface layer. And that is, there's value to that because they are your customers, right? It is difficult to sell. If you want to sell your business someday, if you don't own the customer relationship and you're just a brand on Amazon, that is a different multiplier to somebody that, say, sold 1 million units of their own product through their own domain name, right? So there's different intrinsic values there. And I'm not going to say one way is right or wrong. I will say that it's just, again, difficult to really do it both ways. So there's tons of value to owning your customer as far as your enterprise value, as far as your ability to launch new products and really converse with them, right? Because your customers know your products, and they're going to be the ones to tell you, like, hey, I love that you have this. I would love if you also made that. And you can have that dialogue through Amazon. Not so much. You see reviews and stuff like that, but it's not very personal. So
it's not a conversation.
Without owning that and monetizing that and truly knowing your lifetime value of a customer, that's just a bit of data that's pretty valuable that you're not able to pick up.
Evan, let's talk about subscriptions.
Yeah.
Subscription commerce. Now, we know a couple of things, and we probably agree on those things. Subscriptions, great when it comes to measuring up on acquisition costs. Subscription companies and business models can typically outspend non-subscription competitors. And it also adds a layer of, I suppose, predictability over a certain amount of time, whereas some brands might suffer from seasonality and unpredictability. What is the entryway into thinking about creating a subscription opportunity in a brand? And typically, most brands are going to say, yeah, my product isn't for a subscription. I'm probably going to add maybe a refill thing that doesn't add much value. How do you structure something that makes sense?
Got it. Yeah. So this is actually something I do with a lot of my friends and colleagues. Is talent. I get this question a lot. Like, how do I bring subscription into my business? And almost every business out there can have some form of subscription or recurring revenue model in it. You just have to be creative and think about it. So we have at Stealth, we have something we call the 5 criteria for product market fit, and really with an emphasis on subscription models. And there's 5 things that we've identified that we see time and time again lead to, more often than not, having a successful product. And this applies to subscription heavily, which is, I'm going to run through those real quick, is having a passionate audience. So you need not just an audience that is big, which is also another criteria. You need one that's really all about what your product is. And in this case, what your recurring revenue product is. If it's a membership, if it's content, if it's stuff in a box, like, they got to be passionate about that and really want that product, especially on a monthly or quarterly basis. And with that passion, they got to be big enough. Subscriptions don't work if you are catering to, a population percentage of, 0.1% of the population is interested in what you're selling, right? You're going to get those customers, great, but then scaling beyond that, you're just trying to retain them, and that may not be a growable business. So that's the second one. The third one is a unique value proposition. In this case, meaning, what is your spin? You're always going to be a little bit of a Me Too. A lot of brands have a Me Too aspect to it, just like them, just like that, whatever. But what can you do to make this unique? Is it your own brand? That's a unique value proposition if you sell a good brand. If you have a unique supply chain, say you own olive oil in Italy on a field that is just yours, and that's your supply chain, so you can make the best olive oil possible. Great. Now you have something unique, right? That's number 3. The fourth one is compelling unit economics, which kind of makes sense, but we get a lot of people in subscription commerce that come to us with gross profit margins, say, lower than 30% delivered to the customer, which when your margins are that thin, you don't have a lot of room to advertise profitably. You have to be able to get that right CAC to LTV ratio, which works when your margins are, call it 50%, 45, 50%. Then the last piece, and maybe the most important piece for a subscription, is it has to solve a pain, a market pain of some kind. So you have to have people that are like, I need that subscription in my life. And, I'll use one that we're very familiar with, meal at home. People got to eat. And this is a convenient way to do that. Therefore, it solves a pain for them. And that pain may be going to the grocery store, trying to figure out what to eat and feed themselves or them and their significant other. And that's the easiest one. But you got to find something that makes people be like, yeah, I need that. I need that in my life because that would make my life easier.
I love that. And there's this thought process around subscriptions where it starts with what can I sell more of versus what kind of additional value can I bring to the table? What makes sense for the end consumer? And one of the things I've realized from your experience and what you've the conversation that we've had is that you're very in tune with what the customer wants, and you start your strategies and so-called strategies from where the customers begin. Is that a mistake that you see brands make a lot? With here's an idea, I think it's going to work, but they're not listening to what the consumers want.
Yep, all the time, and that's a growing pain for entrepreneurs. Is usually what they do, right? And so that criteria I went through, most entrepreneurs find the reason to start a business because it solves a pain point. Now, they're not factoring in how big of a pain point or how realistic of a pain point that is to the average person. Doesn't mean their subscription idea is bad, but it might be too niche, right? Like, everybody hates doing laundry as a good example, but there are laundry subscription services in major metropolitan areas that'll take your laundry and drop it back off. And but those are not necessarily economical, but meaning, they're great businesses, but they're kind of expensive, and that's a nice perk to have. It's still a great business, but it's not necessarily applicable to having a big audience. So something that a lot of entrepreneurs do is they have this idea that really sounds like it makes sense, but they don't tell the story right, or it's not applicable to enough people. And then they launch their subscription being like, I thought everybody would love this $500 a quarter subscription. It's like, no, So there's a lot of different reasons for that, but that is a learning moment for a lot of entrepreneurs to see how the public reacts to the value of the subscription that they're taking a part of.
Now, I have a case that's really interesting. Mattress brands. Brands, huge AOV, super long consideration cycles.
Yep.
And buying cycles are really unique because you don't buy mattresses all the time. Yep. There are some, upsells and stuff they can sell after a mattress sale, like pillows, maybe mattress toppers, blankets. But it kind of just ends there. How do you tackle something as unique as a mattress brand and create a subscription opportunity out of that?
Yeah, so mattresses are a pretty hefty investment, and the way that they've been able to create direct-to-consumer mattress brands is, every consumer thinks, how am I going to get a mattress in the mail, right? Like that's I don't even have a car that could fit a mattress in it. How do I get? And then the innovation of these mattresses that can fold into reasonably sized boxes and everything. Change that. So here's a good way I look at in creating a recurring revenue model for a mattress brand. One, create a concierge type service that says, hey, maybe it's part of an upgrade every some odd amount of years. Maybe it's part of a satisfaction guarantee. Maybe it's just part of a membership for sleeping better, other accessories, ways you can get more. If you're gonna have upsells or cross sells, get certain dollars off. Or even going a step further is creating a relationship with, like say, if someone's buying a mattress from you, would they look at a network of you and other, say, home furnishing companies, and you could actually create a collective subscription model with non-competitive partner brands that says, hey, you're part of the home club, and for $60 a year, you get access to this unique stuff at a discount and first come, first serve marketplace for home furnishings at amazing prices. Now, that's not turnkey, but that's one way you could go about it. The last thing I'd also say is, these recurring revenue models work really well with, things like electronics, where you get an electronic and they send you, hey, an annual, service plan for $15 a year or something like that, and they'll replace it. You could probably do the same thing for a mattress at the right economics. Say, hey, for $50 a year, for up to 5 years, you get a brand new mattress. If there's a problem with it, we take care of it. Now, now you're going to get maybe 10% of people take advantage of that. But if that's the case, you're going to get $2,500, for example, in that example, and then be out the cost of one new mattress. So, could you, if people are going to spend $1,000 or $2,000, $1,500 on a mattress, could you get people to pay $50 a year to just be like, hey, if you ever have any problems, we'll find a way to, we'll fix it for you, no questions asked. People don't readily, you're going to get some people don't readily take advantage of those things. So there's just breakage on that. And that's all margin dollars because you just sign them up for it. And then as long as you don't have more than, say, in that example, you don't have more than 20% of people taking advantage of that, you're up quite a bit. So those are some of the ideas off the top of my head anyway.
That makes sense. I've seen warranties done as a subscription as well.
Original subscription model, I think.
Original subscription model. Super low barrier to entry. I don't, but that tends to be overused, and I see a lot of kind of hacky dropshipping-esque e-com brands introducing a lifetime warranty subscription to the little trinkets and gadgets that people buy. which they know they're probably not going to get a callback from.
Yep.
And yeah, it's such a low value added idea, but it kind of just goes to show that adding a subscription idea to businesses is a lot easier than they might think.
Yeah. Another one that just came to mind is like, say that bed company created a relationship with like meditative apps. So you could do something like resell Headspace memberships or something like that. And you could get 10% of the revenue from signing people up through Headspace. Like, it's not your membership, but you're still selling a membership to a highly qualified set of customers that cares about their sleep. People that are focused on really good night's sleep, they tend to focus on meditation. And you could be a reseller of that, and you could just actually, like, there is just straight margin dollars for you right there. You don't even have to worry about the customer.
And it costs you nothing.
And it costs you nothing.
Zero.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
All margin.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of a subscription based business model. How do you does anything change when you introduce subscription that becomes a core part of a business model in terms of measuring cost per acquisition and budget on ads? What kind of changes do you make?
This is the rub with subscription, right? Is you have to invest time into financial planning and analysis. Full stop. And the reason why is subscription works because most of the time you are acquiring new customers at a loss or a break even. You're not regularly making significant money on that first order. It sometimes takes 2 or 3, sometimes even more orders for you to sort of get right-sided on marketing dollars after the cost of goods sold. So the financial planning for that from a cash perspective and working capital perspective is so important. And I'll give you a real life example with some easy numbers that I see people make. This is like a pitfall to avoid. If anyone's thinking about subscription, this is the one step, because you could get caught in things that feel like good problems, but they're actually bad problems. Here's the example. You're paying, let's just say, $50 to acquire a customer, and you're spending, call it, I don't know, $50,000 a month on advertising. You're getting 1,000 new customers, and that's good. Okay. And let's say you make money on that in 3 months. You get a return on your advertising all the way to the bottom line in 3 months. That means, mathematically speaking, you have $150,000 in working capital tied up in advertising. 3 months times $50,000, right?
Yep.
And you're happy with that. This is good. You're building profits. You're generating your business, right? Let's say you're like, hey, I want to put the pedal down and I want to grow this thing. Boom, you jump up to, say, $100,000 a month in advertising with a 3-month media payback. But let's just start saying that maybe CACs go up a little bit, because generally speaking, when you advertise more, your customer acquisition costs usually tend to go up before they go back down. All of a sudden, maybe you're in a 4-month media payback. Okay. You went from $150,000 in working capital at $50,000 a month in spend with a 3-month media payback. And now you're at $100,000 a month in spend on a 4-month media payback. So your working capital needs just jumped from $150,000 to $400,000 to support your marketing. Oh, by the way, you bought more inventory to support higher demand. So now you've bought more products ahead and you've tied up more capital, and adding to your subscription business can all of a sudden become cash intensive. And you can end up, and I've seen this happen so many times, is you can end up failing on your promise to the customer because you won't have inventory in time, because now you're like trying to spread your terms out and people ain't going to ship you anything unless you paid for it. But then you got customers paying you and you're trying to play that game. You got to get bridge capital. All of a sudden you have to give away part of your company at a price you don't want to, or take out a loan. There's all these sorts of things that can happen. All because you didn't plan for that. So that is where analyzing your working capital needs and the compound effect of growth is super important. And it could be the difference in your business being successful or failing, because I have seen companies that very literally just dial it up and be like, I'm going to go 5x over last month because our customer acquisition cost is great and I have the cash right now to do it. But they're not thinking far enough in advance. They have supply chain issues. They have customer service that can't keep up with requests because products are going out late. customer tickets are coming in. They're not able to pay their vendors. And oh my gosh, the entire house of cards falls. And I have seen that happen firsthand. And it is avoidable, but it's tempting because you think right now, I have the money in the bank. I'm going to get these customers because I can. But you're not thinking far enough advanced to what the repercussions of that wave is. And that can leave you in a really, really dire situation for your business.
That's a massive pitfall. Huge pitfall. I think the compound effect that you're describing here is what people don't realize. Especially with inventory.
Inventory, customer service, hiring, all of these things. And it's like your expenses go up, but it comes in after the fact. And if you don't have the capital to bridge that, you can actually ruin your business by being too successful in a short period of time, if that makes sense.
Now, Evan, what are some options that a brand might have when they end up in a situation where they know that they're going to make a good amount of money, they're going to profit in 3 months, 4 months, but CAC's gone up? What would you do?
So you got a couple of options depending on what kind of brand you are. Let's say you're a brand that's got products sitting on a shelf somewhere. Maybe you have obsolescent inventory, things from a previous season you couldn't sell. Turn that into cash. So, I always say if you have products sitting on your shelf, you basically have money sitting on the shelf you can't tap into until you sell it. So if you have old inventory, do a flash sale. Sell stuff at a massive discount. Just to get that cash in your wallet. That's one thing you could do, depending on how much you need. Otherwise, you're looking at needing to talk to a banker and needing to go the route of, say, a Clearbank or a Brex or one of those other sort of revenue-based financiers that exist out there, which it kind of exists for the purpose of supporting hypergrowth at the cost of a % of your revenue. Go out and try to raise money in a really fast fashion. So if you've done rounds of fundraising before, you hit up those people, showing them the numbers, say like, hey, we just got a record new set of customers, but we need capital. This is like, you can, I've seen people basically say like, hey, we'll just give you a convertible note at the last price. You can re-up your investment off of success. Yeah. That works in a environment where people are doling out cash, or you have to try to fundraise really quick. But I'll tell you, you're going to give away more of the company than you like. But if you have 10% of a company, 10% less of your own company, but it's now going to be worth 50% more, you think down the road, that's a good trade-off, right? So that's your only option, or you fail and you miss your customer expectations, which is you got to give away some of the company instead of tanking. Yeah.
Evan, do you have any opinions around revenue-based financing with these companies coming up? There are a couple of options in the market.
Yeah, I think so the catch with revenue-based financing like those are you have to be growing. They're really great if you are in a growth stage. They are not that great if you are in a sort of flat or even a downturn part of your company growth right now. Flat or going down is obviously bad, but flat is also bad with that because you're just giving away a % of your revenue that you already have. But if you're growing, it's a really great way to sort of get more working capital right now on the anticipation of growth and be able to pay it back really quickly. And also, obviously, the biggest upside is those revenue-based financiers don't take up any room on the cap table. So you don't give up any of your company, but they are one of those things that they're almost kind of like a pretty aggressive revolving line of credit. Backed by your own revenue. So it is good, but it is a challenge if you don't continue growing. And you do at some point have to sort of clean that ledger, wipe that ledger clean, and get off of that that treadmill of taking out cash and paying it back, paying it back. Like you do at some point have to bridge that gap internally, which can be a challenge. But again, you don't give away any of your company to do that. So you could then get your company in a better position, raise capital to pay off any outstanding loans and credit from these. It's not really credit, but loans from these companies, and then have that liability gone. So I think they're really good, but only if you're growing.
Makes sense. What are some other pitfalls? And you've worked with a ton of different brands from different verticals and different industries. When it comes to subscriptions, what are some of the other pitfalls that you often see that you go like, oh, not again?
Yeah. It's usually, I would say another common one is managing a subscription program is more work. Great opportunity to discuss what you guys do to a degree, because CRM and maintaining that relationship with customers, paramount with subscription. When you're an e-commerce store, I equate it to going into a local convenience store. You just grab what you need off the shelf. You ring it up and you go, and who knows if you're ever going to be back there. You're just there because it's convenient. But a subscription is maintaining and creating a relationship with that customer, and they are going to vote to keep purchasing with you based on more than what you are, but really what you stand for. And what I mean by that is, does your brand have a social impact purpose, which we find to be really important, and not just one that says, hey, we give 0.5% of our profits to this charity. Like, are you trying to change the way that people eat, which is what we did at Thrive for my time there, and what their mission still is. They were trying to solve the food desert problem, which is a real thing here, which says, hey, say you have a gluten allergy, but you might be in many places, you might be 30, 40, 50 kilometers or more away from a place where you could buy things that you should eat, or that you can eat, that your body will agree with. Well, their mission was to try to get rid of that and say, no, you should have access to that. We're going to deliver it to your door, and it's not going to be ridiculously expensive to do so. So consumers will vote with their dollars around a social cause that your business stands for. And then lastly is sort of on that 5 criteria, you have to make sure that you have a product that continues to impress and almost has to continuously improve over time. Like, the moment you have a product that degrades in quality, which I've also seen happen quite a bit, where they just like, we're selling this product, and say it's an ingestible, say it's a drink. And the moment they get, say, a new can or bottle supplier, or the moment they cheapen themselves a little bit by changing an ingredient that subtly changes the taste of the product, people notice that, and then they stop giving you money. And this happens with fashion all the time. Quality, fashionable wear. The moment your product is less quality, they're not going to buy from you anymore. So you have to maintain that initial impression. Like, some people, last piece I'll say on this, some subscription customers, subscription companies, they put their best product forward, say, we're going to give you on your first order the highest quality version of this product, the most curated, the most value. You open the box, you're like, oh my gosh, I got all this stuff for $50? This is unbelievable. Then the next time you pay $50 and you open it, you're like, oh, it looks like there's a few less things in here, and this thing is already broken. What is this? If you don't keep that quality up and in fact improve it over time, customers will notice, your churn will go up. And then, your forward-looking revenue goes down significantly with churn going up.
With churn, there's the idea around being upfront and transparent with when a rebill or an auto ship is going to happen next. And I see this happening a lot with companies selling consumables, where it's for instance, coffee companies, selling coffee beans. People often end up with, I've been seeing consumers end up with like a huge supply of coffee beans just because they're way too lazy or way too occupied to make any changes to the subscription, to the cadence of the subscription, or to even unsubscribe it. And it ends up creating kind of like a literal sour taste in your mouth, because all the beans go bad, and you don't get to use them, and you've wasted all your money. But it's not the brand's fault, because it's been told. What are some ways to counteract something like that?
So I am personally a pretty big fan of allowing people to control their subscriptions. After doing this for a long time, I have seen time and time again a few things. One, the cost of fighting the customer's true desire, which most of the time is to pause, or sometimes it is to cancel, costs more than trying to keep them. Between customer service interactions, between the customer that leaves and says, yeah, and then they talk to their friend, and their friend says, hey, have you ever tried blah, blah, blah? And they're like, yeah, it was pretty good. I liked it for a few months, and then I got too much coffee, and I had to stop my subscription, but it was no problem. That's not going to taint that future customer, but somebody that was like, yeah, I got on their subscription, and it took me 3 months to cancel it. They kept saying I was canceled, and I wasn't canceled until I finally called back a sixth time and got somebody on the phone, and I charged back my credit card in order to get my previous money. All of that cost you so much, because that mad customer not only cost you hard costs in, say, 10 tickets, maybe a $2 to $3 per ticket cost to resolve, and they've done it 6 to 10 times. So you're already talking about, $15 to $30 somewhere in just customer service costs. Now they're also going to be a detractor for your brand. So when that so instead of being neutral and saying, it wasn't for me, but it was easy to cancel, they're saying, no, don't ever use this brand. I put something on the BBB. I wrote up, every time I see their ads on Facebook, I leave a negative comment, and they're telling all their friends, like, that it costs you so much more than just making it easy for the customer. And customers wield a lot of power through social media, through the Better Business Bureau. So to me, the empirical data shows me that it is not worth it to truly fight customers. And in fact, you will more often than not win them back over time with evolving your offering, or at least leave them with a neutral taste in their mouth. In this case, using that coffee analogy, don't give them a reason to hate you, because that will come back and bite you in your future success. In ways that are tangible and measurable, but also intangible, like them talking horrible stuff about you on social media and blasting your name all over the place.
Couldn't agree more. Apps, softwares, what's your take? Do you build subscription programs from scratch, or do you use a tool like Recharge? What's your take?
So if you're heavily tech influenced from a founding level, building your own subscription technology is well within the hands of a lot of serious technologists. And you can use Shopify's subscription API to build your own app to run a subscription model. Interesting way to go. It's a bigger upfront investment, kind of reserved for these sort of like CTO type founders that exist that are real technologists by trade. Great way to go if you can afford it. But that is also one of those things that's kind of reserved for brands that are well capitalized or have a chief architect level founder. Otherwise, a huge fan of what Shopify has to offer with Recharge and other subscription platforms. I feel like Recharge covers about a good 90% of the use cases. So personally, my bias is using that. But there are caveats. I don't think any single subscription tech I've seen covers 100% of the use cases. So there's usually some amount of custom work if you have a relatively unique subscription. And like sometimes subscriptions are very unique, which is part of your... I want to say unique isn't bad, but unique can be a real challenge if you're like, we ship every 57 days based on what the moon is doing. And then like there's this data we got to get. Like all of a sudden you're like, okay, Recharge can't necessarily bill on moon cycles. But there, outside of that, if you're just trying to get a recurring set of revenue, you can do that most of the time with the apps that are built into Shopify. So even Bold Commerce and things like that. But my personal bias, if I had to pick one, would be Recharge.
Gotcha. Evan, it's been so much fun. For people interested,
time already.
It is time. I definitely would love to have you on a second episode sometime down the road. I'll unpack your experience even further. For those of you guys listening, Evan has a wealth of experience. 20 years is a really long time by any measure, but even more so in the internet space. That's like basically I don't even know.
We did internet advertising on paper and fax machines. Like, so that is where I was. Yeah. Oh yeah. Faxing insertion orders with like all that stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah. Paper, like early 2000s, we still had to do it on paper. You didn't have the tools of like click and buy media.
That is crazy. That's crazy. I don't even think I had access to the internet back in 2000. I was like,
it was a wild place. No segmentation on ad buying. It was wild internet times.
And ad bidding was a bidding process.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. You got on the phone with somebody if you're trying to buy inventory from, say, a Yahoo or an MSN or an AOL. You would get on the phone. You had media buyers in your company that would get on the phone with a media agent or a seller at the publisher, and they would work out a deal on the phone. And it was a literal bidding war where the person that was selling the media, if I worked at MSN, I'm sitting there trying to monetize my impressions the most, and that's how it was back in 2002, 2003. Like, that's exactly how it was.
That is crazy. All right, guys, that's a sneak peek for our next episode. I'd love to dive deeper into that. Evan, what's the best way to get in touch with you and to learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Evan Padgett. Evan at stealthventurelabs.com is my email address. You can also check us out at stealthventurelabs.com. You have a way to contact us through there. Just click around. You can find the form. But yeah, I love talking about this stuff. Just always happy to connect and meet more people in the industry. So reach out.
That was brilliant. Thank you, Evan. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Josh. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the E-commerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.